Here's the thing. Most of these lawsuits are about buyer agent compensation and whether or not the seller should be the one paying for the buyer's agent. Now let's remember how agency works. The seller's agent has a fiduciary to the seller. A fiduciary is a legal obligation to put the client's interest first. Now, the listing agent or seller's agent does not have a fiduciary to the buyer. Of course, they have an obligation to fair and honest dealing, but they do not have a fiduciary because you can't have a fiduciary to two different parties in a transaction. The buyer's agent, on the other hand, does have a fiduciary to the buyer. But historically, the buyer did not actually pay for that fiduciary directly, which is, if you think about it, a little bit odd. And I have no idea how this whole situation came into effect, but for generations, that has been the case, that the compensation to the buyer's side, because spoiler alert, we don't work for free, has been from the seller's proceeds. And so the seller and the listing agent would negotiate what was paid to the buyer's agent, and then that was published in the MLS. I have so many opinions on all of the rhetoric around this and all of the very flashy, clickbaity headlines, but I wanted to explain how agency actually works. So now, nothing right now has really changed much, but we are all watching it, and it could change. What they didn't do, and I wonder why they didn't do this, is they could have just completely decoupled it and said, sorry, no, it makes no sense for the seller to pay the buyer's agent. The buyer needs to pay for their own representative should they choose to have one. They didn't do that. And what they're proposing to me seems actually less transparent and more opaque. The seller is still allowed to offer compensation, but they can't publicize it. So I'm not sure how that helps, but that is what my reading of what they're proposing is. But right now it's all just a proposal. And so what does that mean? Basically, my hope is that it means that buyers will take it very seriously who they decide to hire as their representative. And sure, some buyers will think that they don't need a representative, and that's fine, because the truth of the matter is that you haven't needed one. You could have hired a lawyer this whole time around, and commissions have always been negotiable and optional. So sellers could offer very limited fees to the buyer's agent if they wanted to, and they could have offered more if they wanted to. So those kinds of things have always been going on, and I think we will see some more kind of third-party, no-frills operations and operators kind of pop up especially in the tech space, trying to disrupt real estate again. And some buyers will probably go for that. But again, they've always had discount models that they could have gone to before too. But my hope is it becomes more of a meritocracy, which it already is, but I think it should become more of one, in that you should take it very seriously who you hire as your fiduciary. And there is a lot on the line. And for most people, your real estate is your most valuable asset. Most people in America build intergenerational wealth. The difference that a bad agent makes versus a good agent is huge. And it sets up a whole trajectory and domino effect for your real estate to come in the future. So you should take it seriously who you hire. And I think if buyers have to come to the table with some more closing costs, buyers already have closing costs. They have lender fees, they have title and escrow fees, inspection fees. But if they have to have an additional fee for the buyer's agent, then they may think twice about who they want to work with and how they want to approach the process. And I don't think that's going to be a bad thing. I don't know how any of this is going to really play out, if it's going to change much of anything at all. I've had sellers in the last few days come to me and ask about it. And I'm like, listen, it's optional and it's variable. What do you want to do? They want to incentivize the buyers, agents to sell their homes. Most sellers still want to do that. I don't know. So much remains to be seen, but I wanted to weigh in a little bit straightforward, transparent. So if you have questions, please reach out. All right, take care.